My daughter-in-law drove me to the doctor and whispered to him, "Please increase her medication. She's getting difficult." The doctor looked at me, then asked her calmly, "Why aren't you listed as her official caregiver?" She froze. He opened my file and said something that made her run out of the room. "Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin." The paper crinkled under my legs, cold and stiff. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a sound I had always disliked. Chloe stood by the examination door, her posture relaxed, one hand resting on the knob as if she owned the space. She was smiling at Dr. Thorne, my new primary care physician. Her laugh was a bright, practiced sound. "I just want to thank you for seeing us on such short notice," she was saying, her voice smooth as polished glass. "With Mom's recent episodes, I've been so worried." I kept my eyes on my hands, folded in my lap. My knuckles were prominent, the skin a shade darker than the rest, marked by a lifetime. I concentrated on the feel of my own skin, the solidity of the bone beneath. "An anchor, of course," Dr. Thorne replied. His voice was lower, measured. I had liked that about him during the intake. He had looked at me, not past me. He was a tall man with a quiet demeanor that filled the small room more effectively than Chloe's chatter. "But I'd like to understand these episodes better from Mrs. Wright herself." "Oh, she gets confused," Chloe said, waving a dismissive hand that I saw from the corner of my eye. The gesture was familiar. "Forgets her pills, leaves the stove on. You know how it is?" The memory just goes. She took a step closer to his desk, lowering her voice to a confidential tone. It was not low enough. The acoustics in the tiled room were clear. "Between us, doctor, it's the agitation that's the real problem, the stubbornness. Some days she's just difficult." The word landed in the center of my chest, a small, hot stone. Difficult. It was not the first time I had heard it from her, but it was the first time it had been offered as clinical evidence. I did not move. I let my shoulders slump a fraction, my gaze drift to the floor. I became a woman listening to a conversation she only partially comprehended. Dr. Thorne did not immediately respond. I heard the rustle of a page being turned in my file. "I see," he said, non-committal. Chloe mistook his silence for agreement. She leaned in further, her perfume advancing into the space between us, a sharp floral scent that always reminded me of cleaning products. "This time," she truly whispered. I had to strain to catch it, but every syllable was distinct. "Perhaps we could increase her medication, just a little, for everyone's peace of mind." There it was, the request, laid bare. Not for my health, but for peace of mind. Hurry peace of mind. A chemical solution to my inconvenient presence. A wave of heat rose from my neck to my scalp. It was shame, first. A scalding, infantilizing shame that she would discuss me this way, as if I were a petulant child or a broken appliance. Then, hard on its heels, came a cleaner, sharper feeling. Anger. It did not flare. It crystallized, cold and dense in my gut. I remained perfectly still. The paper crinkled faintly under my slight shift in weight. Dr. Thorne's chair creaked as he leaned back. He looked from Chloe to me. My face was a placid mask, eyes slightly unfocused. I was Eleanor Wright, retired librarian, widow, mother. I was also a woman who had just heard the precise shape of the trap being set for her. "Mrs. Wright," Dr. Thorne said, addressing me directly. I let my eyes wander to his face, blinking slowly. "Your daughter-in-law mentions memory issues and agitation. Can you tell me about that?" I parted my lips. Let them stay open for a second as if formulating a thought. I forget things sometimes," I said, my voice softer than usual, a thread of uncertainty woven into it. "The tea. I left the kettle on last week. Chloe was very upset." It was true. I had left the kettle on. It had whistled for 15 seconds before I returned from the garden and turned it off. Chloe had acted as if I'd tried to burn the house down. He nodded, making a note. Then he turned his attention back to Chloe. His tone changed. It was not hostile, but it acquired a new, surgical precision. "Ms. Wright, I note you've brought Mrs. Wright in today. Are you her designated power of attorney for health care, or her primary caregiver?" Chloe's smile tightened at the edges. "Well, no, not officially. I'm just family. Helping out. My husband, her son, is so busy with work, you see. It falls to me." "I see," Dr. Thorne said again. He opened my file flat on the desk, running a finger down a page. "Because according to this, Mrs. Wright had a full cognitive assessment 6 months ago with her previous physician. The results are here." He tapped the paper. "All within normal range for her age. No indication of dementia or significant cognitive decline." He looked up. "There's also a note from that visit. It says, and I quote, 'Patient declined prescription for sedative or sleep aids, citing preference for routine and herbal tea.'" He paused, letting the words hang in the perfumed air. "So, my question is, what has changed in 6 months that would warrant a discussion about increasing medication she is not actually taking?" The silence was absolute, broken only by the relentless hum of the lights. Chloe's face underwent a subtle transformation. The polished concern melted, revealing for a fleeting second a core of pure, startled calculation. Her eyes darted from Dr. Thorne to me. I met her gaze for an instant, my own deliberately vague, before looking away as if bewildered by the tension. There must be a misunderstanding," Chloe stammered. The smooth confidence was gone. "The last doctor must have missed something. The decline has been very recent, rapid." "Rapid declines are medically significant," Dr. Thorne stated, his voice calm but firm. "They require investigation, not just medication. We would be looking at labs, scans, a neurological workup." He steepled his fingers. "Given the discrepancy between the recorded history and your current concerns, I would need to conduct my own thorough assessment. Today, I will be speaking with Mrs. Wright alone for the remainder of the appointment. Standard protocol when competency is questioned." The phrase hung in the air. When competency is questioned. He had not said if. Chloe's cheeks flushed a mottled pink. She straightened, clutching her purse to her stomach like a shield. "I'm just trying to do what's best for her," she said, the words brittle. "I'm sure you are, Doctor," Thorne replied, but the words were empty of belief. He stood up, a clear signal. "You can wait in the reception area. I'll call you back when we're finished." For a moment she hesitated, her eyes cutting toward me with a look I could not fully decipher. Anger, panic, a warning. I simply stared at the anatomical chart on the wall, a map of a generic human body that looked nothing like my own. "Fine," she said, the single word clipped. She turned and left, closing the door with a firm, quiet click that felt louder than a slam. The room seemed to exhale. The chemical tang of her perfume began to lose its battle with the scent of antiseptic and paper. Dr. Thorne sat back down. He did not speak immediately. He looked at me, his expression neutral, observant. I slowly let my own posture correct itself. The vague confusion I had projected receded from my eyes. I met his gaze directly. "Mrs. Wright," he said finally, "would you like to tell me what's really going on?" I looked at my hands again, at the wedding band I still wore after 12 years alone. The cold, hard stone of anger in my stomach was now a compass, pointing in one clear direction. The shame was gone. In its place was a resolve as sharp and clean as a surgical scalpel. I took a breath. The game had begun the moment I chose to hear that whisper and pretend I had not. Now, I had to decide how to play my first move. I looked at the doctor, this stranger who had just drawn a line in the sand without being asked. "Yes," I said, my voice my own again, quiet and steady. "I believe I would." The silence in the examination room shifted after Chloe left. It was no longer charged with her false concern, but filled with a waiting quality. Dr. Thorne's question hung between us. I weighed my options quickly. Trust was a currency I could not afford to spend frivolously, but he had just demonstrated its value by refusing Chloe's request. That was a significant deposit. My daughter-in-law believes I am becoming a burden, I began, my voice measured. She believes my house and my savings would be better managed by her. The episodes are fabrications or minor incidents exaggerated. The request for medication was to make me more manageable, more compliant. Dr. Thorne listened without interruption, his hands resting on the open file. "You heard the whisper," he stated. "I did. And you pretended not to." It seemed the wisest course at the time. He gave a slow nod. It often is with this kind of dynamic. The first step is usually to undermine the perceived competence of the individual. Medication is a common tool. He closed the file. "Mrs. Wright, based on our interaction today and your medical history, I have no clinical reason to doubt your cognitive capacity. What you're describing is a psychosocial issue, potentially a legal one." "I know," I said. The certainty in my own voice surprised me. "I need to understand what she is doing. I need evidence." He studied me for a long moment. "You are planning to investigate." "I am planning to protect myself. That may involve some risk. If she suspects you are aware, then I must ensure she does not suspect. She believes I am fading, doctor. I will let that belief work for me." He did not smile, but his eyes held a spark of approval. "Be careful. Document everything. Dates, times, specific statements. If she forges anything, if she tampers with your mail or your accounts, those are criminal acts. You may need an attorney." "I may," I agreed. The thought was both daunting and solid, a problem with a defined solution. For now, I need to go back out there and continue the performance. How would you advise I proceed with you? Schedule a follow-up in 2 weeks for a medication review. I will note today that I found no medical basis for altering your prescriptions after an independent assessment. The file will reflect that. It creates a paper trail of its own. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. It was more than I had expected. "You are the patient, Mrs. Wright. My responsibility is to you." He stood, signaling the end of our confidential talk. "Shall I call her back in?" I allowed my posture to soften again, a slight slump returning to my shoulders. "Yes, please." Chloe re-entered the room with a tight smile. The flush had faded from her cheeks, replaced by a pale, controlled expression. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice too bright. "Everything is fine," Dr. Thorne said, his tone professionally bland. "Mrs. Wright and I had a good talk. We've scheduled a follow-up to monitor things. No changes to anything for now." He handed me a printed appointment slip. I took it with a hand I deliberately let tremble slightly. "Oh," Chloe said, blinking. "Well, that's good. Thank you, doctor." The walk to the car was silent. The air outside was cool, a light drizzle beginning to fall. Chloe clicked the doors unlocked and slid into the driver's seat. I took my time arranging myself in the passenger seat, placing my purse carefully on my lap. She started the engine but did not put the car in gear. The windshield wipers swept once, squeaking against the glass. "That was embarrassing," she said finally, her eyes fixed forward. I said nothing. I watched a drop of water trace a path down my window. "I was only trying to help," she continued, a defensive edge entering her voice. "He made it sound like I was doing something wrong. You know how worried I am about you." I turned my head slowly toward her, letting my gaze seem slightly unfocused. "He was very direct, wasn't he?" I murmured, injecting a thread of weariness. "All those questions. My head is aching." Her body language changed almost imperceptibly. The defensive tension eased. She had heard the fatigue, the confusion. She saw what she wanted to see. "It's all right, Mom. You're tired. It's been a long morning." She put the car in reverse. "Let's get you home." The drive was a study in quiet tension. The only sounds were the engine, the wipers, and the whisper of tires on wet pavement. I stared out at the blurred shapes of houses and trees, but my mind was clear and sharp, cataloging. The doctor's office was a checkpoint. I had passed. I had also gained an ally. Now, the real work began in the domestic space she was trying to claim. I needed her to feel secure in her assessment of me. I needed her to make mistakes. As we turned onto my street, I spoke, keeping my voice soft and distant. "Chloe, dear?" "Yes, Mom." "That doctor, he said something about my memory being fine, but I do feel fuzzy sometimes. Maybe he's wrong." I let the words hang, a piece of bait. Maybe you're right to be worried. I saw her shoulders relax further. The reassurance of my doubt was more comforting to her than any assertion of my health. "I just want what's best for you," she said, the smooth veneer returning. "It's so hard to see you struggle. Maybe we should think about making things easier, getting a little more help around the house." "Help?" I asked, feigning vague curiosity. "Oh, just someone to check in, maybe handle some of the bills, the boring paperwork, so you can just rest and enjoy your garden." Her tone was gentle, sugary. "We can talk about it later. No rush." "That sounds very kind," I said, turning back to the window. My house came into view, the white clapboard neat, the porch light off. It looked like what it was, a home, not an asset. To me, it was everything. To her, it was an obstacle to be cleared. She pulled into the driveway. "Here we are. Let's get you inside and make some tea." I allowed her to take my arm as I got out, though I did not need the support. The gesture was for her benefit, not mine. It reinforced her narrative. As we walked to the door, the drizzle dampening my silver hair, I made a decision. I would not rage. I would not argue. I would become the woman she believed me to be, slightly confused, increasingly tired, pleasantly passive. And from behind that mask, I would watch. I would listen. I would record. The hot shame from the doctor's office was gone, forged into something else, a cold, patient strategy. The game was indeed on, and I now knew my opening move. I would let her believe she was winning. It was the only way to see her whole play. The next morning, I waited for Chloe to leave. She had stayed unusually late, organizing my kitchen cabinets with a clattering efficiency that felt more like a territorial inspection than help. She mentioned she had a lunch meeting. I did not ask with whom. When the front door finally closed behind her, the silence in the house was a tangible relief. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, listening to the absence of her. My old smartphone was in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, buried under a stack of linen handkerchiefs. Chloe believed it was broken, and I had encouraged that belief, nodding sadly when she'd offered to recycle it. I pressed the power button. The battery was low, but it lit up. It was a tool, and I needed tools. I had to move normally. My Tuesday routine was to go to the senior center for the midday lunch and the after-meeting book club discussion. I had missed it last week due to a doctor's appointment Chloe had scheduled for a trivial reason. Maintaining my routine was important. It would seem like a comforting habit, not a strategic move. I dressed carefully, chose my walking shoes, and collected my purse and my current novel. Before leaving, I took a slow tour of the main floor. Nothing was overtly out of place, but in my study, the small carved box where I kept recent bank statements was not quite centered on the desk. The angle was off by a few degrees. I did not open it. Not yet. I noted the fact and left the house. The walk to the community center was 10 minutes. The air was cool, the sky a pale gray. I nodded to neighbors, exchanged brief greetings. I was Eleanor Wright, going to her book club. Nothing was amiss. The senior center cafeteria was bustling with the lunch service, a comfortable cacophony of voices and clattering trays. I collected my meal, baked chicken, green beans, a roll, and scanned the room. Mabel was at our usual table by the window, her posture erect, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She saw me and raised a hand in a wave that was more like a summons. I sat down across from her. Mabel, Eleanor, you're late, and you look like you're chewing on tacks. Spit it out. Mabel had been my friend for 15 years. We had met in the library where I worked. She a frequent patron with a taste for hard-boiled detective novels and an intolerance for nonsense. She was a widow, too. She understood the architecture of a life built alone. I took a breath. The noise of the room provided a cover. Chloe is trying to have me declared incompetent. She attempted to have my doctor increase my medication yesterday to make me more manageable. Mabel stopped with her fork halfway to her mouth. She set it down. Her face, lined and expressive, hardened. "Say that again," I told her. The whisper, Dr. Thorne's intervention, the silent car ride, my decision to play the part. I spoke in a low, even monotone, laying out the facts as I would have cataloged books, by title, author, and subject. When I finished, Mabel let out a long, slow breath through her nose. "That piece of work," she muttered, her voice thick with contempt. "I never trusted the sheen on that one. Too polished. What's her play? The house." "The house, the savings, all of it. She's already suggested help with the bills. She's been through my papers." Mabel's eyes narrowed. "You have proof?" "Not yet. Only suspicion, and the word of a doctor who saw through her." I leaned forward slightly. "I need to gather evidence, real evidence. And I need to do it while she believes I am fading. I can't watch her every moment. I can't be in two places at once." A slow, grim smile spread across Mabel's face. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the look of a general presented with a worthy campaign. "You need eyes and ears when you're not there." "Yes, and you're asking me to be your conspirator." "I am." She picked up her fork and stabbed a green bean. "Good. It's about time this place got interesting. What's the plan?" Relief, warm and solid, spread through my chest. I was not alone. First, I need to document everything. I have my old phone. It can take pictures, record conversations. But I need to know when she's coming and going from my house when I'm not there. I need to know if she brings anyone. "I can do that," Mabel said. "My apartment has a clear view of your front door from the living room window. I already watch the street. Now I'll have a reason. I'll keep a log." "It's a risk. If she sees you—" "She doesn't see me," Mabel interrupted. "I'm just an old lady with a bird feeder. She looks right through me. What else?" "I need to check my financial files thoroughly, see what she's already touched. I think she may have tried to forge my signature. I need to photograph the originals, then see if any new documents appear." "You need a safe place to keep the copies. Not in that house." I nodded. "Can I bring them here? Leave them with you?" "Of course. We'll get you a key to my place. You can come and go. We'll set up a system." She ate another bite, thinking. "You'll have to be careful. Act the part. Be vague. Be forgetful. Let her feel confident." "That is the strategy? And the doctor? He's solid?" "I believe so. He gave me a follow-up appointment. He is creating a medical record that contradicts her claims." Mabel grunted in approval. "Good. A paper trail starts with paper. We'll get you a lawyer, too, when the time is right. My nephew is one. Not fancy, but sharp. We can consult him quietly." For the first time since the whisper in the exam room, I felt the weight of the situation shift. It was no longer a solitary burden. It was a project, a campaign with a comrade in arms. The cold anger had a direction now and a partner. "Thank you, Mabel. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we watch her walk out of your life for good." She pointed her fork at my plate. "Now eat your chicken. You'll need your strength. We have work to do." I picked up my own fork. The baked chicken tasted like food again, not just fuel for anxiety. Around us, the cafeteria buzzed with the ordinary conversations of our peers, discussing grandchildren, aches and pains, and the merits of the book we would soon discuss. No one glancing our way would see anything but two old friends having lunch. They would not see the quiet, furious engine of reclamation that had just ignited at our table. I took a bite. The plan was simple. Watch, document, wait, and let Chloe's own greed build the case against her. The plan with Mabel provided a structure, a scaffolding on which I could build my defense. For the next several days, I performed my part with care. I mentioned small forgetfulness to Chloe, misplacing my reading glasses, needing a reminder about a television show time. I accepted her help with a grateful, slightly bewildered smile. I napped in the afternoons, or pretended to, lying on my bed with the door closed while my mind worked through lists and strategies. Chloe's visits became more frequent and more proprietary. She brought groceries I did not need and rearranged my pantry. She talked about safety upgrades and simplifying. Her confidence grew, and with it, her carelessness. She no longer bothered to hide her sighs of exasperation when I asked a repetitive question. She began to have phone conversations in my living room, speaking in a low voice I was not meant to hear, using phrases like the transition and estate planning. I listened from the kitchen, wiping a counter that was already clean. On Thursday afternoon, she announced she was taking me to the bank. Just to update some signatures, Mom. Make sure everything's current. It's routine. My internal alarm sounded, a silent, piercing note. The bank? Today? I'm rather tired, dear. It won't take long. I've made an appointment. Her tone brooked no argument. It was the voice of someone managing an obligation. I let my shoulders slump. All right, if you think it's necessary. The drive was short. At the bank, a young assistant manager greeted Chloe by name. He was overly polite to me, speaking slowly and loudly. They had me sit at a desk. Chloe produced a folder. There were several forms. One was to add her name as a signatory to my checking account for bill-paying convenience. Another was a change of address form, redirecting my statements to her home. Now, Mrs. Wright, if you could just sign here and here, the manager said, pointing. I picked up the pen. I studied the top form. The signature line was blank. But on the second form, the one beneath it, I saw something. It was a copy of an older document, a transfer authorization. And in the signature box was a shaky, looping version of my name. It was not my handwriting. The E was wrong. The T at the end of right slanted the opposite way. It was a forgery, and not a very good one. My hand did not tremble. A cold clarity settled over me. This was no longer about whispers or manipulation. This was fraud, laid out on a banker's desk. I looked up at Chloe. She was smiling, a tense, expectant smile. Just the standard papers, Mom. I let my eyes go slightly vague. I put the pen down. So many lines, I murmured. My hand aches today. All this small print. It swims. I pushed the papers away gently. I don't think I can do this right now. My head, it's fuzzy. Chloe's smile tightened. It's just a few signatures. I'll help you. Perhaps another day, I said, letting my voice quaver. I really am very tired. I feel a bit unwell. The bank manager shifted uncomfortably. We can, of course, reschedule. Chloe shot him a look, then turned back to me, patting my hand. Her touch was cool and dry. Of course, Mom. No rush. We'll do it another time. The frustration in her eyes was poorly concealed. She collected the papers, including the one with the forged signature, and placed them back in her folder. We drove home in silence. The air in the car was thick with her suppressed irritation. I stared out the window, feigning exhaustion, but my mind was racing. She had a forged document. She had tried to use it. She would try again. That evening, she left early, claiming a prior commitment. The moment her car turned the corner, I moved. I went to my study. The locked drawer in my desk was a simple, old-fashioned thing with a small brass key. I kept it in a china teacup on the mantelpiece. Chloe knew where it was. I had never hidden it. The lock was a deterrent against casual snooping, not a real barrier. I turned the key and opened the drawer. The contents were in disarray. I am a meticulous person. I file statements by date, oldest at the back. They were out of order. Several folders from the back were now near the front. I lifted them out and spread them on the desk. I found it in the folder marked Taxes Previous Year. It was not a tax document. It was a blank power of attorney form, partially filled out in Chloe's neat, angular handwriting. My name, my address, my social security number. In the section for the designated agent, she had written her own name and information. The date field was empty. The witness lines were blank. Beneath it were photocopies of my driver's license and social security card. I had not made those copies. And then I found the original of the forged bank form. The shaky signature looked even more pathetic under the direct light of my desk lamp. She had likely practiced. She had failed. My heart beat a steady, hard rhythm against my ribs. This was the evidence. This moved everything from the realm of suspicion to the realm of fact. I retrieved my old smartphone from its hiding place. I plugged it into a charger behind my bedside table. I waited for the battery icon to show a sliver of green. Then I returned to the study. I worked methodically. I turned on the phone's camera. I photographed the disorganized drawer first, establishing context. Then I laid each piece of evidence on the plain wood of the desk and took clear, close-up pictures. The blank power of attorney form, the photocopies of my identification, the forged bank form. I made sure the handwriting, the typed details, were all legible in the image. I took multiple shots of each. The process was calm, clinical. The anger was there, but it was a solid block of ice in my stomach, focus-giving, not clouding. When I was finished, I returned everything to the drawer in the exact disorder in which I had found it. I re-locked it. I placed the key back in the teacup. I took the phone, and following a plan Mabel and I had discussed, I walked to her apartment. It was just after 8, fully dark. She answered on the first knock, ushering me in. "You have the look," she said without preamble. I showed her the phone. I explained what I had found. She scrolled through the images, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Stupid and greedy," she pronounced. "A bad combination. She's rushing. That's good for us. I need to get these pictures somewhere safe, out of the house." Mabel nodded. She went to a small desk and returned with a thumb drive. "We'll upload them to this. I'll keep it. You should also email them to yourself. Use a new account she doesn't know about." We spent the next hour doing just that. I created an email address with a name Chloe would never associate with me. I sent the photographs as attachments. Mabel saved them to the thumb drive and placed it in a small lockbox she kept on a high closet shelf. "This is fraud," Mabel said as I prepared to leave. "This is real. You understand that? This isn't just family drama anymore." "I understand," I said. The weight of it was heavy, but it was a clean weight. The uncertainty was gone. "My follow-up with Dr. Thorne is next week. I will show him these." Mabel grasped my hand. Her grip was strong. "Good. Now go home and be fuzzy. Let her think she's still in control. The tighter she pulls the string, the easier it will be to see where it leads." I walked back to my house under the streetlights. The night air was cool. My house was dark, quiet. It was still mine. I had the proof now. The paper trail began with her forgery, and it would end with her reckoning. The days leading to my follow-up appointment were a study in controlled tension. Chloe's manner became increasingly solicitous, but her eyes held a new, calculating sharpness. The failed bank trip had frustrated her. She began to talk more frequently about planning for the future and making smart decisions now. I nodded along, my expression pleasantly blank, while inside I was assembling my case. I told her about the doctor's appointment, framing it as a minor obligation. "Just to check on those vitamins he mentioned," I said vaguely. "I should come with you," she stated, not offered. "Oh, don't trouble yourself, dear. It's just a quick visit. I'll take a taxi. You have so much on your plate." I infused my voice with a gentle, considerate tone. It was a test. She hesitated, her desire to control warring with the convenience of not having to chaperone me. The convenience won. "Well, if you're sure you can manage—" "I have the address written down," I said, holding up a note card with shaky handwriting. It was part of the performance. "I'll be fine." So, on the morning of the appointment, I called a cab. The ordinary act of leaving my house alone felt like a declaration of independence. I carried my purse, and inside it my old smartphone with the downloaded photographs stored in a hidden folder. The medical office was the same. The sterile smell, the hum of lights. But my relationship to the space had changed. It was no longer a site of ambush. It was becoming an arsenal. Dr. Thorne's nurse led me back. He was at his computer but stood when I entered. "Mrs. Wright, good to see you." His gaze was assessing, professional but attentive. "Thank you for seeing me, doctor." Once the nurse left and closed the door, the atmosphere shifted. He gestured to the chair. "How have things been?" I did not slump in the chair. I sat upright, my hands folded in my lap. I met his eyes directly. "The performance continues, but the situation has escalated. I have evidence." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "What kind of evidence?" I opened my purse and retrieved the phone. I navigated to the hidden folder and handed it to him. "Photographs. Taken last week. She has a key to my desk. She has been through my financial files. She created a blank power of attorney form with her name as my agent. She made photocopies of my identification, and she attempted to forge my signature on a bank document." Dr. Thorne took the phone. He scrolled through the images slowly, his expression growing graver with each swipe. He zoomed in on the shaky signature, on the angular handwriting filling out the power of attorney form. He let out a low breath. "This is unequivocal," he said finally, handing the phone back. "This moves beyond undue influence into premeditated fraud. Have you confronted her?" "No, I am following the strategy we discussed. Letting her believe her narrative is intact. She thinks I am confused and compliant. She's becoming impatient, which makes her careless." He nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. "You've been thorough, and you are right. Confrontation now would likely cause her to destroy evidence or accelerate her plans. She would deny it, and it would become a stressful she said scenario. This," he pointed to the phone, "is objective." "What I need now," I said, "is to formalize my position. You mentioned a paper trail. I need a medical document from you stating your professional assessment of my mental competency to counteract any claims she might make to a lawyer or a court." "I can do more than that," Dr. Thorne said. He turned to his keyboard and began typing. "I will write a detailed note in your chart today, summarizing my findings from both visits. I will note the discrepancy between the objective cognitive assessment from 6 months ago and the unsubstantiated claims of your daughter-in-law. I will document that you presented clear, organized evidence of suspected financial exploitation, and I will state my professional opinion that you demonstrate sound judgment and decision-making capacity." He typed as he spoke, his fingers moving briskly. "I can also provide you with a signed and dated letter to that effect on office letterhead. Would that be useful?" "Extremely," I said. The relief was a solid thing, a wall going up behind me. "Good." He finished typing and turned back to me. "The next step is legal. You need an attorney who specializes in elder law. They can advise you on securing your assets, potentially filing a police report for the forgery, and obtaining a restraining order if necessary. This is a legal matter now, Mrs. Wright." "I understand. My friend Mabel has a nephew who is a lawyer. I plan to consult him." "Now that's a start. But ensure he has specific experience in this area. If he does not, he can likely refer you to someone who does." He paused, his demeanor thoughtful. "Would you like me to make a referral? I know several excellent elder law attorneys in the city. They have seen this pattern before." I considered. "A referral from my physician would carry its own weight." "Yes, I would appreciate that." He wrote a name and phone number on a prescription pad, tore off the sheet, and handed it to me. "Victoria Vance. She is formidable. Tell her I referred you. She will understand the context." I took the paper, folding it neatly and placing it in my purse beside the phone. "Thank you, Dr. Thorne, for believing me, for acting." "It is my duty," he said, but his tone was personal, not just professional. "What is happening to you is wrong. The system is there to protect people, but you have to know how to use it. You are learning quickly." He stood up. "I'll have my letter ready for you by the end of the day. You can pick it up at the front desk, and I will see you for your next routine physical. No more medication reviews unless you request them." I stood as well, feeling a sense of grounded strength I had not felt in months. I had a medical ally who was putting his authority on the line for me. I had photographic proof of crimes. I had a name for a legal ally. "I will be in touch," I said. I left the exam room. At the front desk, I scheduled my next annual physical. The receptionist handed me a sealed envelope. "Dr. Thorne asked me to give you this." I took it. The envelope was thick, the paper substantial. I did not open it there. I placed it in my purse. Outside, instead of calling a taxi immediately, I walked to a small park across the street. I sat on a bench. I opened the envelope. The letter was on official letterhead, dense with professional language, but the conclusion was clear. "In my professional medical opinion, Mrs. Eleanor Wright possesses full testamentary and contractual capacity." It was dated and signed with a firm black signature. I looked at the referral slip. Victoria Vance, attorney at law. I took out my phone. I was not ready to call yet. I needed to see Mabel first. I needed to strategize this next decisive move. The evidence was gathered. The professional validation was secured. Now it was time to engage the law. The reclamation was no longer a secret plan. It was a formal process, and I was ready to begin it. I met Mabel at her apartment later that afternoon. I showed her Dr. Thorne's letter. She read it twice, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Now that's a document," she said. "That's a shield and a sword." I handed her the referral slip. Victoria Vance, an elder law attorney. Dr. Thorne recommended her. Mabel's eyebrows went up. "I know that name. She's expensive, but she's a pit bull. My nephew respects her. If Thorne sent you to her, he means business." She handed the slip back. "You should call. Today." I had anticipated this. The step from gathering evidence to legal action felt like stepping off a stable platform onto a narrow bridge. Necessary, but fraught. "I will, from here. I would prefer she not hear me." Mabel pushed her landline phone across the kitchen table. "Dial." I took the slip and the phone. My fingers were steady. I dialed the number. It was answered on the third ring by a crisp, professional voice. "Law offices of Victoria Vance. My name is Eleanor Wright. Dr. Eris Thorne referred me. I need to consult with Ms. Vance regarding a matter of potential financial exploitation and elder fraud." There was a brief pause, the sound of keyboard keys. "I see. Ms. Vance has a cancellation tomorrow morning at 10. Can you come to the office then?" "Yes, I can." "Please bring any relevant documents, identification, and a list of your concerns. We'll see you then." I hung up and relayed the information to Mabel. "Tomorrow at 10. Good, I'll drive you. No taxis for this." Her tone was decisive. I spent the evening at home acting my part. Chloe called to check in. I told her I had been to the doctor, that it was fine, that I was tired. I asked her to repeat simple details about her day, reinforcing her perception of my fading attention. She sounded satisfied. The next morning, Mabel picked me up precisely at 9:15. She was dressed in a severe navy suit, looking every bit the formidable chaperone. "You have everything?" she asked as I got in. "The letter, the phone with the pictures, my ID, a list of points." I had typed the list on my old typewriter, another item Chloe believed was obsolete. The clacking keys had felt satisfying. Victoria Vance's office was in a downtown building, all glass and steel. Her space was quiet, carpeted, with modern art on the walls. Ms. Vance herself was a woman in her 50s, with sharp gray eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. She ushered me into a conference room, not her office. Mabel came with me, a silent presence at my side. "Dr. Thorne called me yesterday," Vance began, dispensing with small talk. "He gave me a brief overview. Why don't you tell me the situation, in your own words?" I did. I started with the whisper in the exam room. I presented the timeline, the failed bank trip, the discovered documents. I showed her the photographs on my phone. I handed her Dr. Thorne's letter. I spoke clearly, logically, connecting each point to the next. She listened without interruption, scanning each document I placed before her. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You have a strong foundational case. The forged signature is criminal fraud. The blank power of attorney form shows intent. The medical opinion establishes competency. Your daughter-in-law is not subtle." "What do you recommend?" I asked. "A multi-pronged approach. First, we secure your assets. We contact your bank, with you present, to flag your accounts for additional verification. We change all passwords, PINs. We establish that no changes are to be made without your in-person approval. Second, we draft a cease and desist letter to your daughter-in-law, demanding she return any copies of your personal documents and refrain from any further contact regarding your finances or person. Third, we prepare a report for Adult Protective Services and consider filing a police report for the forgery. The goal is to create an immovable legal barrier around you." It was comprehensive. It was exactly what I needed. "How long will this take?" "The asset securing can begin this afternoon. The letters can go out tomorrow. The police report is your choice. It escalates matters officially, but it also creates a public record of her actions. I advise it." I looked at Mabel. She gave a single firm nod. "I want to proceed with all of it," I said. "Good." Victoria Vance made a note. "We'll start with the bank. My paralegal will accompany you and Mabel. Then we'll return here to draft the documents." The next hours were a blur of efficient action. At the bank, with the paralegal by my side, I spoke to the same assistant manager. I presented Dr. Thorne's letter. I explained there had been an attempted fraud. I revoked any prior authorizations and set up new security protocols. The manager was apologetic and cooperative. The power of the law firm's letterhead was palpable. We returned to Vance's office. I signed retainer papers. She drafted the cease and desist letter, its language cold and precise. She also drafted a statement for the police. I provided Chloe's address. The letters would be sent certified mail. It was late afternoon when Mabel drove me home. I felt exhausted but clear-headed. The machinery of justice was now engaged. As we pulled up to my house, I saw Chloe's car in the driveway. My body went rigid. She was not due until the evening. "Do you want me to come in?" Mabel asked, her voice low. "No, it will look more normal if I go in alone. I will continue the act. She cannot know about today." "Call me if you need anything. I'll be watching." I entered the house. Chloe was in the living room, standing by the fireplace. She turned, her smile bright and brittle. "There you are. I was worried. I came by earlier and you weren't home." "I went for a walk," I said, placing my purse on the hall table. The weather was nice. I moved to my favorite armchair and picked up my knitting basket, a project of simple socks. The motion was routine, calming. "A walk? That's good, Mom." "Getting out." She did not sound convinced. She paced for a moment, then turned to face me, clasping her hands together. "You know, I've been thinking about your safety, living here all alone." I kept my eyes on my knitting needles. "I've always been safe here." "Of course, but things change. I've been looking at some wonderful places." She reached into her large tote bag and pulled out a glossy brochure. She held it out to me. "Assisted living facilities. They're like beautiful hotels. All your meals prepared, activities, people around all the time. No more worries about the house or bills." I did not take the brochure. I continued knitting. "This is my home." I know, but wouldn't it be a relief to be cared for? We could sell this place, use the money to ensure you have the very best." Her voice was syrup-sweet, laden with false concern. My yarn basket sat on the floor beside my chair. Inside it, beneath the ball of wool, was my old smartphone. Before sitting down, I had opened the audio recording app and pressed record. The phone was now silently capturing every word. "Sell the house?" I asked, letting a tremor enter my voice. "It's just an option." "The best option, really. For your well-being. We should schedule some tours. I've already bookmarked a few." She waved the brochure again, then laid it on the coffee table. "Just think about it, okay? For me?" I looked up at her then, allowing my face to show confusion, but not defiance. "I will think about it." She beamed, mistaking my compliance for capitulation. "Good, that's all I ask." She glanced at her watch. "I have to run. We'll talk more soon." She leaned down and gave me a quick, dry kiss on the cheek. "Bye, Mom." I listened to her footsteps, the front door opening and closing, the engine starting. I did not move until her car had driven away. Then I put down my knitting. I reached into the yarn basket and stopped the recording. I saved the file. I titled it with the date and one word: brochure. I picked up the glossy pamphlet from the coffee table. It showed smiling, white-haired people playing cards in a sunlit lounge. It was not a brochure for care. It was a blueprint for my displacement. I placed it in a drawer. I had the recording now. Another piece of evidence. The noose was not around my neck. It was a line I was drawing, and with each action, Chloe was wrapping it around her own hands. The tightening was hers. I simply held the end of the rope. I secured the audio recording by emailing it to my new account and transferring a copy to the thumb drive at Mabel's apartment. The digital file felt more substantial than the glossy brochure, which I left in the drawer as a physical prop. The evidence was now a collection: photographs, a medical letter, a digital recording. Each piece was a brick in a wall I was building. 2 days after the brochure incident, a certified mail envelope arrived for Chloe at her home address. I knew this because Mabel's nephew, who worked at the post office, confirmed its delivery. Victoria Vance had acted swiftly. The cease and desist letter would be in her hands. My phone rang that evening. It was my son, David. His voice was tense. "Mom, Chloe just got some legal letter. She's hysterical. What's going on?" I had prepared for this call. I kept my voice calm, measured. "David, your wife has been trying to have me declared incompetent. She forged my signature. She is attempting to gain control of my finances and my home. I have proof. The letter from my attorney is a response to that." There was a long silence on the line. I could hear his breathing. That's a serious accusation, Mom. Chloe said you've been confused, that you're misunderstanding things." "I am not confused. I have a letter from my doctor stating I am fully competent. I have photographs of the forged documents. Your wife suggested I move to an assisted living facility so she could sell my house. I have a recording of that conversation." I stated each fact without heat, like reading a list. The attorney's letter is the first step. It instructs her to cease all contact regarding my affairs. It also demands the return of any copies of my personal documents. "A recording?" He sounded stunned. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You do not need to say anything. This is between Chloe and me. You are my son, and I love you. But you were not here. You did not see what she was doing." Another silence. Then a weary sigh. "I'll talk to her." "That is your decision. My attorney's name is Victoria Vance. If Chloe has any questions, she can direct them there." I ended the call. My hand was steady. I felt a pang for David, but it was distant, secondary. His choice to believe Chloe's narrative over mine had allowed this to progress as far as it had. He was now a spectator to consequences he helped enable. The next morning, I had a scheduled conference call with Victoria Vance. I used the phone in Mabel's apartment for privacy. "The letter was delivered," Vance stated. "We have the return receipt. I've also filed the police report as you authorized. They've assigned a case number. It's on record. Now, we wait for her response, or her next move." "What is the most likely next move?" I asked. "Based on the pattern, she will either panic and attempt to retreat, or she will double down and try something more drastic to force the issue. Given her previous boldness with the forgery, I suspect the latter. She may try to get a doctor of her own choosing to evaluate you. She may attempt to initiate guardianship proceedings. Our job is to be ready." "How do we prepare for that?" "We have your sworn affidavit detailing the events. We have Dr. Thorne's letter and his willingness to provide testimony. We have the photographic and audio evidence. We have the police report. If she petitions for guardianship, we will respond with a mountain of counter evidence and a motion for sanctions. It will not go well for her." Her voice was confident, almost dismissive of the threat. It was reassuring. "And my son? He is not a party to the legal actions unless he chooses to be. The cease and desist is for Chloe. His involvement is familial. Keep the communication lines with him open if you wish, but do not discuss legal strategy. Be a mother, not a client, when you speak to him." I understood. After the call, Mabel made tea. We sat at her kitchen table. "He called you," she stated. "Yes, he was shocked." "He should have been paying attention," Mabel said flatly. "But that's his burden now. You're doing what you need to do." I nodded. The waiting period began. I maintained my routine, but the performance felt thinner now, like a coat I might soon take off. Chloe did not visit. She did not call. The silence from her direction was more telling than any outburst. 3 days later, Mabel called me, her voice tight with excitement. "You have a visitor at your front door. It's not Chloe. I was at home organizing my seed catalogs. Who is it?" "A man in a suit, carrying a briefcase. He's ringing the bell." A cold trickle of apprehension, followed by a surge of resolve. "I'll go see." "I'm watching. I have my phone ready to call Vance." I walked to the front door and opened it. A middle-aged man in an inexpensive suit stood on my porch. He held a leather folder. "Mrs. Eleanor Wright?" "Yes." "My name is Robert Gable. I'm a notary public." He offered a small, awkward smile. "I've been engaged to witness some documents for you today." The pieces snapped together. This was the drastic move. She was bypassing persuasion and attempting execution. She must have believed the legal letter was a bluff, or she felt cornered enough to try an end run. She was not with him. She was sending a proxy, assuming my compliance. I kept my expression politely blank. "Documents? What documents?" "I believe it's a power of attorney form. Your daughter-in-law, Chloe Wright, arranged for me to come. She said you were expecting me." Worriedly, he glanced past me into the house, as if looking for her. I did not invite him in. I stood in the doorway. "I see. And did Mrs. Wright provide the document to be notarized?" "Yes, ma'am. It's right here." He opened his folder. I saw the top of a form. I could not read it, but I knew what it was. The blank form from my drawer, now filled out and dated. "And where is Mrs. Wright? Shouldn't she be present?" "She said she would meet us here. She may be running late. Shall we wait inside?" This was the moment. The confrontation was not with Chloe, but with her gambit. I had a choice. I could refuse, send him away. That would be a victory, but it would not be the decisive one. It would simply reset the board. A better plan presented itself, cold and clear. "Why don't you come in and have a seat in the living room?" I said, stepping aside. "I'll make some tea while we wait for her. The document must be in order before you notarize anything, correct?" "That's correct. I need to verify your identity and ensure you are signing willingly and are of sound mind." "Of course." I led him to the living room. "Please, make yourself comfortable. I won't be a moment." I walked to the kitchen. I did not put the kettle on. I took my phone from my pocket. I sent a single pre-typed text message to a group that included Mabel and Victoria Vance. It read, "Plan B. Now. He is here." Then I called out, "Would you prefer peppermint or chamomile?" "Oh, either is fine," he called back, his voice slightly muffled. "I'll bring both." I waited. I counted seconds in my head. Less than 3 minutes later, I heard a car pull up outside, then another. Doors opened and closed. Firm footsteps approached my front porch. The doorbell rang. I walked calmly to the front door and opened it. Mabel stood there, her face set in grim satisfaction. Beside her was Victoria Vance in a tailored suit, her briefcase more imposing than the notary's. And just behind them, getting out of his own car, was Dr. Eris Thorne. I stepped back to let them enter. The notary public, Robert Gable, rose from the sofa, his expression one of pure confusion. "Mr. Gable," I said, my voice now entirely my own, stripped of any pretense of frailty. "It appears the rest of the party has arrived. Let's proceed." The notary public, Robert Gable, stood frozen beside my sofa, his leather folder held against his chest like a shield. His eyes darted from Mabel's stern face to Victoria Vance's professional calm, then to Dr. Thorne, who he seemed to vaguely recognize as medical personnel. Confusion was etched into his features. "Mrs. Wright," he said, his voice uncertain. "Please, everyone, come in," I said, moving to my usual armchair. I did not sit. I remained standing behind it, my hands resting on its upholstered back. It was my ground. Mabel positioned herself by the fireplace. Dr. Thorne stood near the bookshelf, a silent, authoritative presence. Victoria Vance moved to the center of the room, setting her briefcase on the coffee table. "Mr. Gable, is it?" Vance said, her tone brisk but not unkind. "My name is Victoria Vance. I am Mrs. Eleanor Wright's attorney. This is Dr. Eris Thorne, her primary care physician. And this is Ms. Mabel Price, her friend and witness. We are here to observe the proceedings you were engaged to perform." I was engaged by a Chloe Wright to notarize a document for Mrs. Wright here," he stammered. "She said it was a simple power of attorney." "And is Mrs. Chloe Wright present?" Vance asked. "She said she would meet me here." "I see. And did she provide you with the document to be notarized?" "Yes." He reluctantly opened his folder and extracted a single sheet of paper. Vance extended her hand. After a brief hesitation, he handed it over. She scanned it. A faint, cold smile touched her lips. "This is a durable financial power of attorney form," naming Chloe Wright as the agent, as it appears to be filled out in Mrs. Eleanor Wright's name, but the signature line is blank. She looked at him. "Your role as a notary is to verify the identity of the signatory and witness the signing, correct? To ensure it is done willingly and without coercion." "That's correct." "And what steps have you taken to verify Mrs. Wright's willingness and capacity?" He shifted his weight. I just arrived. I was going to speak with her. Mrs. Chloe Wright assured me her mother-in-law was expecting this and was of sound mind." "Did Mrs. Chloe Wright provide you with any medical or legal documentation to support that claim of sound mind?" Dr. Thorne's voice was quiet but carried across the room. "No, she just said it was arranged." At that moment, headlights swept across the front window. A car door slammed. Quick, sharp footsteps approached the porch. The front door, which we had left slightly ajar, was pushed open. Chloe walked in. She was smiling, a folder identical to the notary's under her arm. "Sorry I'm late, the traffic—" Her sentence died in her throat as her eyes adjusted to the scene in my living room. She saw the notary, pale and awkward. She saw Mabel, glaring. She saw Dr. Thorne, his arms crossed. She saw Victoria Vance, holding the power of attorney form. Her smile shattered, leaving behind a rigid mask of shock. What is this?" Her voice was too high. "This, Mrs. Wright," Victoria Vance said, "is an intervention. I am Victoria Vance, attorney for Eleanor Wright. You've been served with a cease and desist letter. Yet you proceeded to engage a notary public to witness the signing of a power of attorney document. That is a direct violation of that letter's instructions." Chloe's eyes flew to me. I met her gaze, my expression neutral. There was no confusion in my eyes now, no vagueness, only clear, focused assessment. "Mom," she said, the word a desperate question. "What are you doing? Who are these people?" "These are my allies, Chloe," I said, my voice even. "You have met Dr. Thorne. This is my attorney, Miss Vance, and my friend Mabel. They are here to ensure that what happens in my home today is lawful and reflects my own wishes." Her face flushed with a combination of anger and panic. "This is ridiculous. I'm trying to help you. You're not well. You're confused." She turned to the notary. "She's clearly not in her right mind. Look at this. This ambush." The notary, Robert Gable, looked deeply uncomfortable. Mrs. Chloe Wright, you stated she was of sound mind and expecting me. She is. She's being manipulated. Chloe gestured wildly at Vance and Thorne. By them! Dr. Thorne stepped forward. Mrs. Chloe Wright, I am Eleanor Wright's physician. I have conducted 2 independent assessments. I have reviewed her full medical history. I have here a signed letter stating my professional opinion that she possesses full testamentary and contractual capacity. He placed a copy of the letter on the coffee table beside Vance's briefcase. There is no medical basis for your claims of confusion or incapacity. None. Chloe stared at the letter as if it were a venomous snake. You don't know her like I do. You see her for minutes. I'm here every day. She forgets. She leaves stoves on. She needs help. I have never left a stove on, I said calmly. The kettle whistled once for 15 seconds. You have taken minor events and constructed a narrative of decline. You did so to serve your own purposes. How dare you, as she spat, her composure breaking. After everything I've done for you. Victoria Vance spoke again, her voice cutting through Chloe's outburst. What you have done, according to the evidence we have compiled, includes the unauthorized copying of personal identification documents, the forgery of a signature on a bank form, the creation of a fraudulent power of attorney instrument, and a pattern of attempting to isolate and manipulate Mrs. Eleanor Wright for financial gain. We have photographic evidence of the forged document and the blank power of attorney form taken from Mrs. Wright's desk. We have an audio recording of you pressuring her to move to an assisted living facility to facilitate the sale of this house. A police report has been filed regarding the forgery. Each word was a hammer blow. Chloe's defiance crumpled under the weight of the list. Her eyes widened as Vance detailed the evidence. She looked at the notary, who was now backing toward the door, his face a mixture of embarrassment and alarm. I think my services are not required here, Mr. Gable mumbled. He did not look at Chloe. He simply left, closing the front door softly behind him. The room was silent save for the sound of Chloe's ragged breathing. She was cornered, and she knew it. All her assumptions about my ignorance, my weakness, her own cleverness, lay in ruins around her. She was not facing a confused old woman. She was facing a wall of law, medicine, and witnessed fact. She finally looked at me. Really looked. The false concern was gone. What remained was raw, exposed animosity. You set this up, she whispered. I protected myself, I replied. You made it necessary. The confrontation was not a shouting match. It was a quiet, absolute unveiling. The uninvited guest was not the notary. It was Chloe, whose plans had just walked into a room prepared for their dissolution. The real meeting was now beginning. The silence after the notary's departure was dense. Chloe remained standing in the center of my living room, isolated. The folder she had brought dangled from her hand. Her eyes were fixed on me, but the fury in them was being rapidly diluted by a dawning comprehension of her position. She was not in a family dispute. She was in a legal proceeding, and the judge and jury were already present. Victoria Vance broke the silence. She did not raise her voice. Mrs. Chloe Wright, please have a seat. She gestured to the sofa. Chloe did not move. I don't have to sit. I don't have to listen to this. You can stand if you prefer, Vance said, unperturbed. She opened her briefcase and removed several documents, laying them neatly on the coffee table beside Dr. Thorne's letter. But you will listen. What happens next is your choice, but the parameters of that choice are non-negotiable. Chloe's gaze flicked to the documents. What is that? This is a proposed settlement agreement, and this, she placed another paper beside it, is a summary of the evidence we have compiled, which is now also in the possession of the police department, case number appended at the top. The charges that could be pursued include forgery, attempted fraud, attempted financial exploitation of an elder, and violation of a cease and desist order. These are misdemeanors and felonies, Mrs. Wright. They carry potential fines and incarceration. The color drained from Chloe's face. You're bluffing. I do not bluff. Vance tapped the evidence summary. We have the forged bank form. We have the blank power of attorney you created. We have the audio recording from this room in which you pressure Mrs. Eleanor Wright to sell her home. We have the notary public who can testify to your attempt to procure a signature under false pretenses today. We have Dr. Thorne's affidavit of capacity. The case is not weak. A prosecutor would likely be interested. Chloe finally sat, collapsing onto the sofa as if her legs had given way. She stared at the papers without seeing them. David, she whispered, your husband is not a party to this agreement, Vance continued, as if she hadn't spoken. This is between you and Eleanor Wright. The agreement is straightforward. In exchange for Eleanor not pressing charges and not pursuing civil litigation, you will agree to the following terms. 1. You will have no further contact with Eleanor Wright of any kind, in person, by phone, electronically, or through intermediaries. 2. You will have no involvement in her financial, medical, or personal affairs, now or in the future. 3. You will sign a legally binding renunciation of any interest in her estate, current or future. 4. You will return any and all copies of her personal documents in your possession. 5. You will not come within 500 feet of this residence. In essence, you will vanish from her life. Chloe looked up, her expression one of stunned disbelief. You want me to sign away everything? You have no legal everything to sign away, Vance corrected. You are signing an agreement to cease your attempts to obtain what is not yours. The alternative is that we proceed with criminal charges. I will file for a restraining order today, regardless. The police will likely wish to interview you. Your name will become part of a public record concerning elder abuse. I cannot predict the outcome of a trial, but I can guarantee the process will be public, expensive, and damaging to your reputation. Your choice is between a clean, private exit and a messy, public fight you are very likely to lose. I watched Chloe's face as the reality settled in. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, sick fear. She had imagined a confrontation with a confused old woman she could bully or gaslight. She was not prepared for the impersonal machinery of the law, activated and arrayed against her. She looked at Dr. Thorne, who met her gaze with professional detachment. She looked at Mabel, whose expression was one of grim satisfaction. Finally, her eyes returned to me. You planned all this, she said, her voice hollow. I responded to your actions, I said. You made the list. I simply checked the items. She flinched. For a long moment, she said nothing. The only sound was the faint tick of the clock on the mantel. I could see the calculations behind her eyes, the cost of a lawyer, the scandal, the certain estrangement from David if this became public, the sheer weight of the evidence. There was no path to victory, only a choice of defeats. If I sign this, the police report goes away? She asked Vance, her voice small. The report remains on file, but we will not pursue it further, and I will inform the detective that a private resolution has been reached. No charges will be filed by us. And David, your relationship with your husband is not covered by this document. That is a separate matter. She swallowed hard. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. It was not a dramatic collapse, but a quiet, total deflation. The polished, concerned daughter-in-law was gone, leaving a woman who had gambled and lost. I need a pen, she said, barely audible. Victoria Vance produced a pen from her briefcase. She slid the settlement agreement and the renunciation document across the coffee table. Read them carefully, initial each page. Sign at the end. I will notarize them myself. My commission is current. The next few minutes passed in a silence broken only by the scratch of the pen and the rustle of paper. Chloe read with dull eyes, then initialed, then signed. Her signature on the renunciation document was tight and small, a pathetic contrast to the flamboyant forgery she had attempted of mine. Vance countersigned as witness, then applied her notary stamp and seal with a firm, final click. "You will return any documents in your possession to me within 24 hours," Vance said, collecting the signed papers. "You will not contact Mrs. Eleanor Wright again. Is that understood?" Chloe nodded, not looking at anyone. She stood up, her movements wooden. She did not glance at me again. She walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the afternoon light. The door closed behind her with a soft, definitive click. No one spoke immediately. We listened as her car started and drove away. Victoria Vance placed the executed agreements in her briefcase and closed it with a snap. "It's done. These are enforceable. If she breaches them, we have overwhelming grounds for immediate legal action. I will file them with the court tomorrow." Dr. Thorne let out a long breath. "She won't be back." Mabel walked to the window and peered out. Good riddance. I remained behind my armchair, my hands still resting on the back. The cold, hard stone of anger that had lived in my stomach for weeks was gone. In its place was a profound, weary emptiness, soon to be filled by peace. The reclamation was complete. The house was silent, truly mine again. The victory was not sweet. It was solemn, and it was just. The quiet that settled in the house after everyone left was different from any silence I had known before. It was not an absence of sound, but an absence of threat. The air itself seemed easier to breathe. I stood in my living room for some time, simply listening to the clock tick, to the distant sound of a lawnmower. The performance was over. I could stop acting. The following days were spent restoring order. I cleaned spaces Chloe had rearranged. I returned my kitchen utensils to their proper drawers. I changed the locks on my doors, not out of fear, but as a ritual of reclaiming. Mabel helped, her presence a comfortable, undemanding thing. "Doctor." Thorne called to check on me, a professional courtesy that felt personal. Victoria Vance confirmed the legal documents had been filed. The machinery I had set in motion completed its cycle and went still. Weeks passed. Spring deepened. My garden, which I had neglected during the siege, called for attention. I spent my mornings there, knees in the dirt, hands tending to the roses and herbs. The physical work was a therapy, the growth a quiet rebuttal to the decay Chloe had tried to assign to me. It was on one such morning, with the sun warm on my back and the scent of lavender in the air, that Mabel and Dr. Thorne came by. It was not a planned meeting, but a casual one. Mabel let herself in through the gate, carrying a bag of fresh scones. Dr. Thorne, who had taken to walking in the neighborhood on his days off, saw us and waved from the sidewalk. I invited him in. We sat at the wrought iron table I kept under the old apple tree. I brought out a pot of tea, my good china, the clink of cups, the murmur of conversation about nothing in particular, the weather, a new book, a local news story. These were the sounds of my peace. Mabel joked about the scones being store-bought. Dr. Thorne, Eris as he now asked me to call him, spoke of his own mother's garden. There was no tension to navigate, no subtext to decipher. It was simply three people sharing a morning. This was the scene when my son, David, found us. I saw him hesitate at the garden gate, his form silhouetted against the bright street. He held a bouquet of flowers, their cellophane wrapping catching the light. I raised a hand in greeting. Mabel and Eris exchanged a glance and made polite noises about needing to leave, but I shook my head. "Stay, please." David came through the gate. He looked older, his face drawn. "Mom, David, would you like some tea?" He nodded, sitting awkwardly in the remaining chair. He placed the flowers on the table. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were direct, unadorned. "I know," I replied. I poured him a cup. I should have seen it. I should have listened. I chose the easier path, which was to believe the narrative that required nothing of me. He did not look at Mabel or Eris. He spoke to me. "She's gone. We're separated." The things she said after, they confirmed everything. "I'm so very sorry." I listened. The anger I might have felt toward him had been burned away in the larger fire. What remained was a sad clarity. He was my son, and he had failed me. He was also here, accountable. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "The apology is accepted." He seemed to deflate slightly, as if he had been braced for a different reaction. "Is there anything I can do?" "You can visit, as my son, not as a manager, not as a protector, just visit." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I would like that." He stayed for 20 minutes, drinking his tea, making stiff conversation with Mabel and Eris about his work. When he left, the atmosphere was not healed, but it was no longer broken. A path, however narrow, had been cleared. After he was gone, Mabel let out a long sigh. "Well, indeed," Eris said. We finished our tea. The conversation turned, as it often did in those weeks, to the mechanics of what had happened, the system, medical, legal, that had ultimately worked. "It only works if you know how to use it," Eris remarked, "and if you have advocates." "Many don't," I said. The thought had been forming in my mind for days. Many don't have a Mabel or a Dr. Thorne or the means to hire a Victoria Vance. They hear the whisper and have no one to tell. Mabel looked at me sharply. "What are you thinking, Eleanor?" "I'm thinking of the senior center, all of us there, with our routines and our small worries. How many are hearing whispers? How many are having papers moved in their drawers?" I set my cup down. "I am thinking of starting a group, an informal thing. A place to talk about rights, about documents, about what is normal forgetfulness and what is not. How to keep your financial house in order. How to choose a trustworthy person for your healthcare proxy, not as an expert, but as someone who has just been through it." Eris smiled. "They would listen to you. You have the credibility of experience." "I could help you set it up," Mabel said, her eyes alight with the prospect of a new project. "We could call it something plain. The Caregivers List was the title of your story, wasn't it? But that's from the wrong side. We could call it the Independence Checklist." "That is a good name," I said. And so it began. The following week, I proposed it to the director of the senior center. She embraced the idea. We scheduled the first meeting for a Tuesday afternoon. I prepared a simple handout listing: red flags, essential documents, and local resources. I did not tell my own story in detail, but I alluded to it. I saw recognition in several pairs of eyes around the table. Hands went up with questions. The conversation was practical, empowered, unafraid. I left that first meeting feeling a tiredness that was wholly satisfying. The vengeful energy had been transmuted. It was no longer a weapon aimed at Chloe, but a tool I could place in other hands. My home was my own. My mind was my own. My time was my own. That evening, I sat on my porch as the sun set. The list was complete. The items had been addressed not with rage, but with resolution. The vengeance was not in Chloe's humiliation, but in my unassailable peace. I had reclaimed everything she tried to take, and in doing so, I had found more, a purpose reforged from the attack itself. The story was over. My life, my own life, continued. It was enough. It was everything.